I never imagined this would be how it all ended. I had spent my entire life putting my daughter first. Her happiness, her success, and her future were always my number one priority. But as I sat in the small living room, holding the wedding invitation in my hands, a sense of betrayal washed over me. The card was beautiful, just like the wedding I had dreamed of for her. I had planned every little detail, made sure everything would be perfect. I gave up so much, my time, my savings, even my own dreams, just to make sure she had the wedding of her dreams. And now, as I stared at that invitation, I realized that the very thing I had worked so hard for had been shattered. I had always believed that family came first. For me, there was never any question. When my daughter Emma first told me she was getting married, I was overjoyed. She had met someone she loved. But there was a catch. It wasn't just the usual wedding jitters or excitement. It was her ex-fiancé, Daniel, who had come back into the picture. I didn't know it at the time, but this would be the start of everything unraveling. Emma had been in a relationship with Daniel years ago, and while I had never been particularly fond of him, I had accepted their relationship as part of her life. But they broke up, and Emma moved on, or so I thought. As I watched her excitedly plan her wedding, I began to notice strange little things. She talked about Daniel more than usual. The once dismissed ex seemed to have resurfaced in her life, but this time I thought it was just nostalgia or unfinished business. It wasn't until she asked me for a little extra money to cover a few unexpected wedding expenses that I started feeling uneasy. "It's just a small thing, Mom. Nothing big," she had said, smiling as she handed me a wedding budget sheet. But something in her voice made me pause. She seemed almost too eager, too desperate. I brushed it off, convinced I was just being paranoid. After all, what kind of mother wouldn't help her daughter with the wedding of her dreams? But as the days went by, more things started to fall out of place. The wedding venue was changed at the last minute, and the costs seemed to keep rising. The more I asked about the changes, the more evasive she became. I had been footing the bill for the majority of the wedding: flowers, catering, the venue, every little thing that Emma wanted to make the day unforgettable. I told myself it was worth it, that she deserved it, but my gut was telling me something was wrong, something I wasn't seeing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but the subtle signs were there: long conversations behind closed doors, secretive texts that she quickly hid whenever I walked by. One night, I overheard Emma talking on the phone with Daniel. The conversation was brief, but the tone of her voice was something I had never heard before. There was a softness in it, something familiar. It struck me. This wasn't just some old friendship. It was something more. Something was brewing, and I had no idea how deep it went. I couldn't shake the feeling that the wedding wasn't about the man she was marrying. It was about him, her ex, the man who had hurt her so many years ago, the man she swore she had gotten over. But here they were, reconnecting in secret, and it made me feel sick. I tried to confront her, but every time I brought it up, she would change the subject or brush me off. The guilt I felt in questioning her loyalty, in doubting her choices, weighed on me. I just wanted to believe that my daughter was the same girl who looked up to me with love and admiration, but I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. The wedding was fast approaching, and I was starting to lose track of everything. My thoughts were filled with the image of her and Daniel, planning something I wasn't a part of. I had become just a spectator in my own daughter's life, playing the role of the doting mother while everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. I had given up so much to make her happy, to provide her with everything I thought she deserved, but I never imagined that I would be left standing alone in the end. I tried to keep my composure. After all, it was her big day. But deep down, I knew something was about to change. What I didn't know was how much it would hurt when the truth finally came out. It was only a matter of time before I would learn exactly how far Emma had gone to secure her future, and at what cost. It was the week before the wedding, and I could feel the weight of everything that had been building. The excitement I had once felt for my daughter's big day had slowly turned into a gnawing dread. The atmosphere around the house was tense, almost suffocating. The wedding preparations were supposed to be a time of joy, of celebration, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. Every day, Emma would come to me with new emergencies, and I would do my best to cover the costs, to make sure everything would go off without a hitch. But in my gut, I felt like I was being played, manipulated by my own daughter, the one I had spent my whole life supporting. The tipping point came one evening when Emma asked for another large sum of money to cover some unexpected costs for the wedding. At this point, I was starting to grow weary. I couldn't understand why the budget seemed to keep spiraling out of control. When I questioned her about it, she gave me the same vague excuses, her voice sharp with irritation. She was always so good at deflecting, making me feel like I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew I had every right to be suspicious. That night, I took a deep breath and asked the one question I had been avoiding for weeks. Emma, why do you need so much money? What's really going on here? Her face immediately changed. The bright smile that had always been present faltered, and for a split second, I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there. She quickly recovered and gave me a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Mom. It's just the last-minute details. Everything will be fine. I didn't believe her. I wanted to, more than anything, but the growing sense of unease told me I was dealing with something far more complicated. As she turned away, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. Without thinking, I walked over and glanced at the screen. It was a text from Daniel. We're on track. Don't worry. It'll all be worth it in the end. I felt my heart sink. I didn't need to see the rest of the message to know exactly what was going on. Emma wasn't just planning a wedding. She was planning something else entirely, something she hadn't shared with me. The weight of that realization hit me like a freight train. For all my efforts, all my sacrifices, my daughter was about to make a decision that would hurt me in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. I waited until she was asleep that night, tossing and turning in her room, no doubt dreaming about the wedding day that was quickly approaching. I couldn't sleep. The reality of the situation was too much for me to ignore any longer. I had spent so many years pouring my heart and soul into her, and now it felt like I was losing her to someone else, someone who had already caused her pain once before. The next morning, I decided to confront her. I couldn't sit back any longer. I had to know the truth, even if it meant breaking my heart in the process. I found Emma in the kitchen, humming as she sipped her coffee, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Emma, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but filled with years of unspoken worry. She turned to me, that smile still on her face, but something in her eyes, something guarded, something cold, told me this wasn't going to be easy. What's wrong, Mom? She asked, clearly trying to act as if everything was normal, but I wasn't buying it. You know, Emma, I've been thinking a lot about this wedding, I began, choosing my words carefully. And I can't help but feel like something's off. I've been giving you everything, sacrificing everything, and I'm starting to wonder if you really want this wedding or if you're just trying to prove something. Her expression hardened, and she set her coffee cup down with a little more force than necessary. What are you saying? She asked, her voice low, almost defensive. I took a deep breath. I know about Daniel. I know he's back in your life, and I'm starting to think that the wedding isn't what you want. I've been paying for everything, Emma, but I don't know if you're truly moving forward or if you're still stuck on someone who hurt you. She froze. Her face, once filled with excitement and anticipation, went pale. For a moment, there was silence. Then she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could see the struggle in her eyes. She was deciding whether or not to lie to me, to cover up her choices. Mom, it's not what you think, she said quietly, finally meeting my gaze. Her voice faltered, and I could see her fighting against the truth that was threatening to come out. But it was too late. I had already pieced it together. The secret was out, and now everything I had worked for, every penny, every sacrifice, every ounce of love, was about to be shattered. The room felt colder than it ever had before. I couldn't even bring myself to look at Emma. It was as if the woman standing in front of me wasn't the daughter I had raised, the little girl I'd watched grow up. Her face was still frozen in that mix of guilt and deflection, but it was no use. I had already figured it out. I could see the weight of the lie in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders that betrayed her attempt at control. "Emma," I said, my voice trembling now, but not from fear, anger, yes, but also hurt. "You're spending the wedding money on Daniel, aren't you? You're using my money to buy him an engagement ring, aren't you?" Her eyes widened for a moment before she dropped them to the floor, unable to look me in the eye any longer. That was all the confirmation I needed. It was like a slap to my face. But the sting didn't just come from the money, it came from the betrayal. I had worked myself to the bone for this day, for her happiness, and all this time she had been planning to turn it into something completely different. My own daughter, the one I had raised, was turning her back on everything I had done for her. "I didn't," she started, her voice cracking as she tried to form an explanation, but she knew it was too late. She could barely keep the words together. "I didn't want you to know this way, Mom. It's just, he's the one I wanted to be with. You don't understand." I shook my head slowly, my chest tightening as a feeling of emptiness crept over me. "No, I understand perfectly," I replied, trying to hold back the tears that were welling up in my eyes. "I understand that after everything I've given up, my savings, my time, my energy, you choose him. You choose a man who hurt you once before, a man who isn't even part of the life I thought you were building. You choose him over me, over everything I've done for you." Her silence was deafening. I could see her struggling to find the right words, to explain how this was all just a mix-up, how this wasn't what she had meant to do. But there was no way to explain away the truth that had been staring me in the face for months, the truth I had refused to acknowledge because, as a mother, I didn't want to believe that my own daughter could betray me in this way. "I didn't want to disappoint you, Mom," Emma whispered, her voice small now, like the daughter I had raised. "But Daniel and we've been talking, and I've realized I never stopped loving him. I just, I thought I could move on, but I couldn't." A bitter laugh escaped me, and I immediately regretted it, but I couldn't help it. "Move on?" I repeated, the sarcasm in my voice sharp. "You've been planning this wedding with someone else, someone you're about to marry, and you're telling me you couldn't move on from him? Emma, you didn't just choose Daniel, you chose him over everything I did for you, over the money I gave you, over my sacrifices, over the future I wanted to see for you. All for him." She flinched at the words, but it didn't change anything. I couldn't just pretend like everything was fine. I couldn't pretend like the daughter I had given everything for was still the same person. In her eyes, I wasn't even a person anymore. I was just a means to an end, someone to give her what she wanted. And that's when it hit me. Harder than anything else. She had never truly understood the meaning of sacrifice. All the years I spent working double shifts, scrimping and saving, never buying anything for myself, all of it had been for her. And now I was nothing more than a stepping stone for her to reach the life she thought she deserved. The anger I had been suppressing, the anger that had built up over the years, started to bubble to the surface. "You think this is just about money, don't you?" I asked, my voice sharp. "That it's just about me paying for your wedding? No, Emma, it's not about that. It's about respect. It's about what I've given up for your happiness. And now you want to throw it all away for a man who wasn't good enough for you in the first place?" Emma's face crumpled, and she looked away, trying to hide the tears that were welling up in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could do both, have the wedding, have Daniel, but I see now that I've hurt you, and I'm sorry." The words sounded hollow to me. Apologies didn't fix this. Apologies didn't undo the years I had spent giving her everything I had, only to be discarded at the first sign of real love. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Emma," I said quietly, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I've always been there for you, no matter what. But this is too much." I turned and walked out of the room without another word, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever see her the same way again. All I knew was that my daughter had just taken everything I had given her, everything I had ever sacrificed, and thrown it all away. And I couldn't help but wonder if that was the end of everything we had been, if this was the moment I finally lost her. I spent the next few days in a haze. The wedding plans continued, of course. Nothing stopped because of my pain, my broken heart. Emma still needed the dress fittings, the flowers, the last-minute details that needed my attention, and I had no choice but to keep moving forward. But with each passing day, the weight of what had happened between us sank deeper and deeper into my chest. Every smile I gave her felt like a lie. Every conversation felt strained, like I was acting in a play that I no longer cared about. I couldn't stop thinking about what Emma had said, that she still loved Daniel. And it wasn't just that. She had taken everything I had given her and used it to create a future that wasn't meant to be. That was the cruelest part of it. I had put all my love, my resources, my heart into making sure she had everything she needed, everything she deserved, but in the end, all I had done was make it easier for her to walk away from me, to choose him over me. As the wedding day drew closer, I found myself questioning everything. Had I been a fool all these years? Had I allowed myself to be manipulated by the one person I loved most? I thought about the countless hours I had worked, the extra shifts I had picked up, the things I had gone without just so I could make sure Emma had a better life. I had done it all willingly, thinking that one day she would see it, that one day she would understand the sacrifices I had made for her. But now I realized that I had been nothing more than a means to an end, a provider. I had poured my soul into her future, and this was how she repaid me. I was standing in the kitchen one evening, making dinner, when Emma walked in. She had that look on her face, the one she always wore when she knew she had to face the consequences of her actions. But even as I saw her, I couldn't bring myself to feel pity for her. Instead, all I felt was numb. The excitement I should have been feeling about her wedding was gone. I didn't care about the dress anymore, or the flowers, or the plans for the big day. I cared about the betrayal that had been planted in my heart, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice tentative, like she wasn't sure how I would react. I didn't even look up from the stove. "I don't know what more there is to say, Emma," I said quietly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You've already told me everything I need to know." She hesitated before speaking again. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know what to do. I thought maybe if I married someone else, I could forget about Daniel, but I couldn't, and now everything's a mess." I put the spoon down, finally turning to face her. I was no longer angry, at least not in the way I had been. What I felt now was something far worse. It was a hollow ache in my chest, a deep, gnawing pain that didn't seem to have any resolution. "You think I don't know that, Emma? You think I don't know that you've been trying to put on a show for everyone, trying to make everything look perfect, like your life was this fairy tale, when in reality you were just using me to get to the next step in your own selfish little world?" Her face reddened as she took a step back. "That's not fair, Mom. You're making it sound like I never cared about you. You know I love you." "Love me?" I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. You love me, but you took my money to buy him an engagement ring. You used me to make your wedding happen, and now you're telling me you still love me? Do you have any idea what that feels like, Emma? She stood there, silent for a long moment, her eyes welling up with tears. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Not after everything. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, the apology barely audible. I thought, I thought I could do both, but I can't. I should have told you the truth sooner. I should have told you about Daniel. Her words, her apology, it all felt too little, too late. I had given her everything. I had tried to give her the life I never had, a life filled with opportunities and love, and this was how she repaid me. Emma, you don't understand, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. It's not just about the money, it's about trust. It's about what I've done for you. I gave up everything for you, and now I'm just a pawn in your game, a means to an end. I'm not your bank. I'm not your safety net. I'm your mother, and you've treated me like I don't matter. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly, her voice rising in desperation. I love you, Mom. I do. Please don't turn away from me now. But I could already feel myself pulling away. The bond I once thought was unbreakable, the love I had given so freely, had been shattered by her choices. I had given her everything, and she had taken it without a second thought. I need to think, I said, my voice low but firm. I don't know if I can keep doing this, Emma. I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is okay. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but I turned away before she could. The weight of the decision was too heavy, and I needed space, space to breathe, to think, to figure out how I could possibly move forward after this. As I walked away from her, I realized one thing for sure. Everything had changed, and I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we had before. The next few days were like a blur. The wedding was just days away, and Emma seemed determined to carry on as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just learned the painful truth about what she had been doing with my money. She went on with the last-minute preparations, talking about the final touches for the reception, the dress, the flowers, all while avoiding any mention of the real issue between us. I kept my distance, not trusting myself to speak without letting the hurt in my heart spill out in a way I couldn't take back. I spent most of those days lost in my own thoughts, wrestling with the betrayal that stung deep. How could she do this to me? How could she take everything I had given her and use it for something so selfish? I had worked my entire life for her, and in return, I had always hoped that one day, when the time came, she would appreciate me. But now I wasn't sure if she ever truly had. I thought about all the things I had done for her over the years, supporting her through every hardship, sacrificing my own happiness for hers, and what had she done in return? She had turned me into a fool, someone who was used and discarded when no longer needed. It was late one night when the phone rang, breaking the silence that had become my constant companion. I didn't even look at the caller ID before I picked it up, already knowing it was Emma. Her number was the only one that had been calling in the last few days, desperate to fix what had been broken. I hesitated, but then I answered. Mom, her voice was hesitant, soft like she was walking on eggshells. I've been thinking about what happened, and I don't want things to stay like this. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to understand. I was confused. I thought that by marrying someone else, I could put the past behind me, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. I don't want to lose you. I sat down slowly, the weight of her words heavy in the air. I could feel her reaching out, her desperation to make it right. But it didn't change the facts. She had made a choice, and it was a choice that had torn us apart. Emma, I said, my voice calm, but full of the sorrow that had taken root in my heart. You don't understand, do you? This isn't about just you and Daniel. It's about everything I've given you, everything I've sacrificed for you, and how you've taken it all and used it to create a life that doesn't even include me anymore." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, and I could almost feel the tears she was holding back. But I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. Not when everything felt so raw, so unfair. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom. I thought you'd understand once everything settled down, but now I see how much I've hurt you. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm sorry." Her words, no matter how genuine they might have sounded, didn't make the pain go away. "Sorry doesn't change anything," I said softly, my throat tightening. "Sorry doesn't undo the years of sacrifices, doesn't undo the love I gave you, doesn't undo the trust you've broken. I gave everything for you, Emma, and now I don't even know who you are anymore." She stayed silent for a long moment, and then, her voice small and broken, she spoke again. "Mom, I still want you to be there. I still want you at the wedding. You're my mother, and I need you there with me. I know I've messed up, but I want to make it right." The request felt like a slap. How could she ask me to stand beside her, to be the proud mother, when all I felt was like an afterthought, like an obstacle in her pursuit of the life she thought she wanted? I had worked for years to make sure she had everything she needed, and now she was asking me to overlook everything, to pretend as though nothing had changed. "I can't be there, Emma," I said, my voice steady but final. "Not like this. Not when I don't even know if you understand the damage you've done. I've given you everything, and now you've made your choice, and you've made it clear that I'm not part of that life anymore." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could feel the weight of her disappointment, but I couldn't take it back. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. "You don't have to forgive me now," she finally said, her voice full of sadness. "But I hope one day you will, and if you change your mind, I'll be waiting." I ended the call without saying anything more. As the phone went silent, I realized just how much had been lost. I had tried to hold on, to keep the family together, but now I saw that the ties that bound us had frayed beyond repair. I couldn't go to the wedding. I couldn't stand there and pretend everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. The daughter I had raised, the one I had fought for, had made a choice that excluded me, and no amount of apologies would fix it. In the days that followed, I stayed busy. I kept myself occupied with things that didn't matter, trying to block out the pain that was threatening to consume me. The wedding was coming, and I knew it would happen without me. But I also knew that the path forward wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. I had given up so much for her, but now it was time for me to stand up for myself. The wedding might go on without me, but I was done playing the role of the doting mother who always came second. The day of the wedding arrived, and the house was strangely quiet. The sound of preparation, the excitement, the bustle that should have filled the air, it was all gone. Instead, there was only an overwhelming silence that wrapped itself around me, suffocating and heavy. I spent the morning staring out of the window, watching the cars pass by, each one carrying couples and families to their own events. Meanwhile, my daughter, the one I had given everything to, was about to walk down the aisle without me. I knew the wedding would happen without me there. I had been excluded, and as painful as that was, I also knew I couldn't force myself into something that no longer had room for me. Emma had made her choice, and I had to live with it. But there was a small part of me that couldn't help but wish that things had turned out differently. I had always pictured myself standing proudly beside her, smiling as she took the next step in her life. But now that dream had crumbled into something unrecognizable. As the clock ticked closer to the ceremony, I tried to distract myself. I did a few chores around the house, organized some paperwork that had been piling up, but none of it mattered. My mind was consumed with thoughts of Emma, of the wedding she was having without me, of the money I had given her, and the truth I had uncovered about her betrayal. I couldn't shake the images of her in her wedding dress, standing at the altar, looking over at Daniel, and not me. I kept wondering if she was feeling any guilt, if she had any idea what it cost me to stay away. She had been so quick to dismiss me, to ignore the sacrifices I had made for her over the years. I wondered if she even realized what she had done, or if she was so wrapped up in her own feelings of guilt and shame that she hadn't stopped to think about how it had affected me. Around noon, I received a text message from Emma. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. "I understand why you can't come, Mom. I just want you to know that I love you, and I hope you'll be proud of me, even if I've hurt you. I'm sorry for everything." The words were kind, but they didn't fix anything. They didn't take away the years of sacrifice, the endless hours spent working, the endless love I had poured into her, only to have it thrown back in my face. I wasn't sure if she understood the magnitude of what she had done. I wasn't sure if she even cared. I wanted to reply, to tell her that I loved her too, to somehow make her understand the depth of my pain. But I couldn't. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of being the one who always gave and gave, tired of being the one who always made the sacrifices, tired of being the one who was left behind. The message wasn't enough to heal the wounds that had been opened, and I didn't think anything would be. Instead, I put my phone down and walked over to the window. I could see the cars lined up outside, and I knew that Emma would be in one of them soon, on her way to the ceremony. The thought should have brought me some sense of closure, but it didn't. It just reminded me of everything I had lost. My heart felt heavy, like a weight was pressing down on it, and there was no way to shake it off. As I stood there, staring out the window, I realized that there was no going back. The daughter I had raised, the one I had sacrificed everything for, was no longer the person I thought she was, and I had to accept that. I could hear the distant sound of the church bells ringing, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. My breath caught in my throat. It should have been me there, walking her down the aisle, holding her hand, telling her how proud I was. But instead, I was standing alone in my living room, watching the world go on without me. I realized that this was no longer about her. It was about me. I had given Emma everything, and now it was time for me to take something back for myself. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about taking control of my own life again. I had spent so many years living for her happiness, for her future, but I had forgotten to live for myself. I had lost myself in the process, and I was tired of it. The time had come for me to stop being the person who always put others first. It was time for me to start focusing on my own happiness, my own future. I didn't need to be at her wedding to know that I had done everything I could for her. I had loved her with everything I had, and that was enough. It was time for me to step back, to let go, and to find a way to move forward. As the bells rang louder, I stood up straight, took a deep breath, and walked away from the window. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let this heartbreak consume me. I had spent so long giving to others, but now it was my turn. My life wasn't over, and I wasn't going to let my daughter's choices determine my future. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something inside me, hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life. Maybe I could still find happiness, and maybe, for the first time, I could finally live for me. The wedding came and went. I received a few pictures from the day, a smiling bride in her gown, a picture of Emma and Daniel standing side by side, happy, glowing, and unaware of the storm that had just torn their mother's heart apart. I couldn't bring myself to look at them for long. Instead, I found myself focusing on the life I had neglected for so many years. I spent time cleaning up the house, organizing my finances, and starting to make plans for myself. It wasn't easy. Every corner of my home felt like a reminder of everything I had given up for Emma, every moment spent hoping that she would finally understand the depths of my love. But now I needed to focus on moving forward. I began to reestablish connections with friends I hadn't spoken to in years, people I had pushed aside in favor of being there for Emma. It felt strange at first, but it was a step in the right direction. I spent time volunteering at a local charity, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time for. Slowly, life began to feel a little less empty, a little more like it used to before everything revolved around Emma. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was someone who had a life, too. I thought about Emma often, of course. I wondered how she was settling into her marriage, how her relationship with Daniel was evolving. But the bitterness had started to fade, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the relief of no longer being so consumed by her. Maybe it was the realization that I had to let her live her life, even if it meant stepping away. I didn't need to be a part of her every moment. I had been there for her for years, and now I needed to be there for myself. One afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the voice when I answered, but the moment the person spoke, I knew exactly who it was. "Mom, it's Emma." Her voice sounded small, almost fragile, and it hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't heard from her since the wedding, and despite everything that had happened, a part of me had been waiting for this call. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me right now, but I need to say something. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize I made a huge mistake. I used you. I took everything you gave me and I just threw it away. I don't even know how to begin to apologize for that. I can't change what I did, but I can try to make things right. I'm sorry, Mom. I've always loved you, but I didn't know what love really was until now." I let her words sink in. For a moment I considered hanging up, but then I took a deep breath and listened. Maybe this was the apology I had been waiting for, the one that would heal the broken part of me. "I don't know, Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've hurt me in a way that I don't know if I can ever fully forgive. I gave everything for you, and it feels like none of it mattered. But I'm glad you're finally understanding what I've been trying to say all along, that it's not just about the money, it's about trust, it's about respect." "I understand, Mom. I do, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know that I realize the damage I've done, and I'm sorry. I'll always be grateful for everything you've done for me." "I hope you remember that," I said quietly. "I hope you remember what love really means, and that it's not just about what we can get from each other. It's about giving, about respect, and about understanding the sacrifices we make for the people we care about." "I will, Mom. I promise. I'll make it right. I don't know how, but I will." The conversation ended shortly after that, and I was left staring at my phone. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of something close to peace. Emma was finally starting to realize the weight of her choices. It didn't fix everything, but it was a step. I didn't know if we could ever be the way we were before, but maybe this was the beginning of something new. The next few months were a mix of healing and reflection. Emma and I didn't speak often, but the conversations we had were different. She was more open, more willing to listen, and I started to see small changes in her. It wasn't instant forgiveness, and it wasn't easy, but the truth was, I was starting to feel lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by her decisions. I had my life back. I made a decision, one that felt right. I started to explore things I had once wanted to do, things I had pushed aside for the sake of my daughter. I enrolled in an art class, something I had always dreamed of but never had the time for. I spent weekends in quiet parks, sketching scenes that brought me peace. I reconnected with my own passions, the ones that had been buried under years of motherhood and sacrifice. Through all of this, Emma kept reaching out. She sent me messages, pictures of her life with Daniel, small updates on how they were settling in, but I kept my distance, not out of anger, but because I knew that I couldn't return to what we once had. I couldn't forget the hurt, and I didn't want to live in the past anymore. I had my own life to live now, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about that. One day, out of the blue, Emma called me again. This time, her voice was full of excitement. "Mom, we're having a baby," she said, her voice full of joy. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." I could hear the happiness in her voice, and it made my heart ache in a way I didn't expect. I had never wanted to be just a distant observer in her life. I had always wanted to be there for her, but now, as I listened to her, I realized something important. I wasn't just her mother anymore. I was my own person. I had my own life, my own future, and I didn't need to be everything to her in order to be happy. "I'm happy for you, Emma," I said, my voice soft but sincere. "I really am. I know you'll be a wonderful mother. I want you to be part of it, Mom. I want you in my life. Please don't stay away. I've missed you." I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in. I realized that the healing process wasn't about going back to what it once was. It was about moving forward. We both had changed, and maybe we could find a new way to be a part of each other's lives, but this time it would be on my terms. "I'll be there when I'm ready, Emma," I said quietly. "I can't promise anything right now, but I will be there when I'm ready." I hung up the phone, a bittersweet smile on my face. The past was behind us and the future was uncertain. But one thing was for sure, I had learned to live for myself again, and that, in the end, was the most important thing I could do. Days turned into weeks, and I continued my quiet journey of self-recovery. I focused on the things I had let slip for years, my own health, my interests, the small joys that I had forgotten in the midst of all the chaos. Emma's call had shaken something loose inside me, a flicker of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. I had a new purpose now, not just for her or for anyone else, but for myself. I found solace in the little things. I walked through local parks, my hands tucked in my jacket pockets, watching the changing seasons. I rediscovered my love for painting. I started attending art galleries and even joined a small local art group. There, I met other women, many of them older, just like me, who were rediscovering parts of themselves they had long forgotten. It was refreshing, empowering. It felt like I was finally living for myself, and that was enough. No longer was I chasing approval or validation from anyone. I had come to understand that I could still have a fulfilling life, no matter how different it might look from the one I had imagined. And yet, Emma's calls kept coming. It wasn't frequent, but when they came, I noticed a change in her. She seemed genuinely remorseful, more grounded than before. I couldn't help but soften toward her, even though part of me still held back. I had to. I needed time to heal, time to see if the changes were permanent. I had given her everything, and it had taken years to realize that what I needed most was to focus on myself. One evening, a letter arrived from Emma, and it was different from the usual quick text messages. It was a long letter, one that I hadn't expected. She apologized again, but this time the words felt weightier, more thoughtful. "Mom, I know that my actions hurt you in ways I can never truly understand. I've spent the last few months reflecting on everything. What I did wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal of your trust. I hurt you in the worst possible way, and for that I am truly sorry. I understand now that love isn't just about taking, it's about giving too. I want to make up for the years I've missed, for the love I've taken and never properly appreciated. I know I can never undo what's been done, but I want to try, Mom. I want to be there for you. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I hope one day we can build a relationship based on respect and love without the expectations of the past. I miss you, Emma." I read the letter several times, letting the weight of it settle over me. It was clear that Emma had been thinking deeply about her actions, and there was a rawness to her words that I hadn't seen before. I knew this wasn't the same girl who had brushed aside my sacrifices. This was a woman who had come to realize the depth of the hurt she had caused, and for the first time in months, I felt the smallest spark of hope. I didn't respond immediately. I needed more time to process, to see if her change was real. But there was something in her letter that felt different, a sincerity that had been missing before. I didn't know what the future held, but I did know that I couldn't keep holding on to the anger and the pain. If anything, I needed to move forward. I took my time processing Emma's letter, but there was a part of me that knew I had to find a way to move past the pain, even if it meant setting a new boundary. I had been living in the past for so long, haunted by what had happened, consumed by what I had lost, that I wasn't sure how to move forward. But as the days passed, I realized that it wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning how to live with it, and more importantly, learning how to heal. I started to reach out to old friends, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. We shared stories, reminisced about the old days, and filled the empty spaces that had been growing in my life. It felt good to laugh, to reconnect with people who saw me as more than just Emma's mother. They reminded me of the person I used to be, the woman who had dreams, who had a life outside of raising a child. It was a reminder of the strength I had within me, even when I had forgotten it. I also continued with my painting, using it as an outlet for the emotions that still swirled within me. Every brushstroke was a release, a way of letting go of the resentment that had built up over the years. Slowly, the weight of the past began to lift. I wasn't fully healed yet, but I could see the path forward. A few weeks later, Emma called again. This time, I was ready to listen. "Mom," she said, her voice hesitant but warm, "I know it's been a while since we talked, and I don't want to keep pushing you, but I really want to see you. I miss you. I miss what we had. Please, I'm asking you one more time. Can we meet? Not for anything big, just to talk, to see if we can start over." The request was simple, but the weight of it was immense. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew I needed to take this next step. It wasn't about forgiving her in an instant. It was about starting over, slowly, building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. "I think we can meet," I said, my voice soft but steady. "But it's going to take time, Emma. I'm not the same person I was before. I can't be, and neither can you, but we can start somewhere. Just not now. Let's give it a little more time." "I understand," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "Thank you, Mom. I'll wait. Whenever you're ready." I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. I wasn't ready to fully embrace the past, but I was ready to begin healing, and that was enough for me. Weeks passed, and life slowly started to feel more like it once had before the chaos. I had spent so much time trying to fix everything for Emma, trying to make her happy, that I had forgotten to focus on myself. Now I was finding balance in the little moments. It wasn't always easy, and I still had those moments of sadness, of remembering the hurt, but they were fewer and further apart. I started to take longer walks, sometimes down by the lake where the trees whispered in the breeze and the sun reflected off the water in a way that made everything feel peaceful. I'd find a bench, sit and watch the world go by, people laughing, children playing, couples holding hands, and I would breathe, just breathe and feel the weight lift off me. Slowly, I felt like I was regaining a part of myself that had been buried for so long. One day, as I was walking back home, I bumped into an old neighbor, Carol. She had been a friend of mine before life got so complicated. We exchanged pleasantries, and before long we were sitting at a nearby cafe, catching up on the years we'd missed. Carol had always been someone who could make me laugh, someone who could remind me of the person I used to be before marriage, before motherhood, before all of the sacrifices that defined me. We talked about old times, about life, about how we had both changed. I realized how much I had missed these conversations, these connections. "So, how have you been, really?" Carol asked after a while, her eyes kind and understanding. "You've been through so much, but you look different, lighter, somehow." I hesitated for a moment. "I think I'm finally starting to live for myself again, Carol. For the first time in years, I'm learning what it means to be just me, without any of the expectations, the guilt, or the sacrifices that used to define me." She smiled softly. "I'm so glad to hear that, Margaret. It's about time. You deserve it." Her words stayed with me long after we parted ways. It was a reminder that I didn't have to be defined by my role as Emma's mother. I could still be me, the woman who once had dreams of her own, the woman who could still create a future, even at my age. Life wasn't over for me just because my daughter was grown and had moved on. That afternoon, as I walked home, I realized that I was slowly but surely building a new life. It wasn't perfect, and I wasn't fooling myself into thinking everything would be fixed in an instant, but it was progress, and I was beginning to see that happiness wasn't just something that happened in the past, it could still be part of my future. Not long after my conversation with Carol, Emma called again. This time I was ready to speak with her. I had spent weeks mulling over everything, trying to sort through the tangled emotions that came with being her mother, but also being an individual. The guilt, the frustration, the love, it was all still there, but it wasn't as overwhelming as it had been before. I had learned to take a step back, to give myself the space I needed to heal. "Mom," Emma said on the other end of the line. Her voice sounded a little different, more vulnerable, more mature, as though the time apart had done something to her as well. "I know we haven't really talked much since the wedding, but I've been thinking, I don't want things to stay like this. I want us to figure this out. I miss you, and I miss having you in my life. I know it's going to take time, but I'm ready. I just want to make things right." I took a deep breath. "Emma, I've spent a lot of time thinking too, and I've realized that as much as I love you, I can't keep living in the past. We've both changed, and I need to accept that. What happened between us hurt me in ways I can't just forget, but I also know that I can't stay angry forever. I've spent so much time holding on to resentment that I almost forgot how to love you the way I used to. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I thought I was doing what was best for me, but I see now that I was selfish. I was so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't think about how it affected you. I don't expect things to be the same, but I want us to try. I don't want to lose you." There was a long silence as I thought about her words. Could I really let go of everything? Could I truly start over with her, knowing how much had been broken? It wasn't going to be easy, but I realized that I was the one who had to choose. I had to choose to heal, to forgive, and to move forward, but it had to be on my terms, at my pace. "I think we can try, Emma," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But it's going to take time. I can't just forget what happened, and I can't go back to the way things were before. We need to build a new relationship, one that's based on respect, honesty, and understanding." "I understand, Mom. I'm willing to take things slow. I just want to be in your life again." "I'm here, Emma," I said softly, "but we'll take it one step at a time." We ended the call shortly after that, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't rushing into anything. I wasn't pretending that everything was fixed, but I was open to the possibility of healing, of finding a way to rebuild what had been lost. As I sat down to reflect on everything that had happened, I realized something important. The journey to healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting it and moving forward. It wasn't about fixing my daughter or changing what had already been done. It was about finding peace within myself, And for the first time, I believed that was possible. It had been several months since that phone call with Emma, and things between us had slowly started to shift. There were moments of discomfort, moments where old wounds would resurface, but there were also moments of genuine connection. We were still finding our way, still learning how to be mother and daughter again, but we were taking it one day at a time. I had come to realize that rebuilding our relationship wasn't going to happen overnight, but it was happening in its own way, at its own pace. That was enough for me.
Emma visited me one afternoon, unannounced, which felt like a sign that she was truly trying to bridge the gap between us. I had just finished painting when I heard a knock on the door. I opened it, and there she was, standing on the other side, her hands fidgeting nervously by her sides. I could tell she wasn't sure what kind of reception she would get, but when I smiled and stepped aside, she hesitated for a moment before walking in. "I brought some lunch," she said, holding up a bag of food. "I figured we could just sit and talk, like we used to." I nodded, my heart swelling with the quiet joy of the moment. It wasn't the grand gesture I had imagined over the years, but it was real, it was simple, and that's what mattered most. We sat down at the kitchen table, and for the first time in a long while, we just talked. We didn't talk about the wedding or about what had happened, but about life, about what she was doing now, about the baby she was expecting, about her hopes for the future. And for once, it didn't feel forced. There was no guilt hanging in the air, no tension. It felt like a fresh start, a new chapter we could both write together, free from the burden of the past. As we ate, Emma shared stories of her and Daniel adjusting to married life, of the ups and downs that come with any relationship, but also the excitement of becoming parents. She was more open now, more honest, and I found myself listening with a kind of warmth that I hadn't realized I still had in me. I didn't feel the need to lecture her, to remind her of all the mistakes she had made. Instead, I simply listened, offering my thoughts when I felt they were needed. By the time we finished our meal, we were both more relaxed. Emma was still the woman I had raised, but she was also someone who had grown, someone who had learned from her mistakes, and I too had changed. I had learned that the road to forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about accepting it, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. Before she left, Emma hugged me, and it felt different this time. It wasn't an apology wrapped in guilt. It wasn't a desperate attempt to fix things. It was a hug between two people who had made mistakes, who had hurt each other, but who were finally willing to heal. "I'm really glad we're doing this, Mom," Emma said quietly as she pulled away. "I don't know what the future holds, but I want you in it." "I'm here, Emma," I said, my voice steady, but full of the love I had kept hidden for so long. "And I'll always be here when you're ready." The days that followed that lunch were filled with small moments of progress. Emma and I continued to talk, sometimes about trivial things, sometimes about the deeper, more difficult subjects. We didn't pretend everything was perfect. We both understood that it would take time for the cracks in our relationship to fully heal. But what mattered most was that we were trying, truly trying, to rebuild what had been broken. I kept painting, kept finding solace in the strokes of my brush, in the quiet moments that gave me time to reflect. It was my way of keeping grounded, of staying connected to myself as I navigated this new chapter of my life. And slowly, I began to feel whole again, as if the pieces that had once been scattered were coming together, not in the way I had expected, but in a way that felt right. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, I looked out at the sunset and thought about everything that had brought me here, the love I had given, the pain I had endured, and the strength I had discovered within myself. I had spent so many years believing that my purpose was to be Emma's everything, to give her the life I never had. But now I understood something deeper. My purpose was to live for myself, to find my own happiness, and to let go of the idea that my worth was tied to someone else's expectations. When Emma called that evening to check in, I felt the weight of everything we had been through, but there was also a sense of peace. Our relationship wasn't perfect, and I didn't know if it ever would be. But it was ours, and it was real. We were moving forward together, even if it was just one small step at a time. "I'm glad we're okay, Mom," Emma said softly, her voice full of warmth. "I am too," I replied, my heart lighter than it had been in years. "And I'm proud of you, Emma, proud of how far we've both come." And in that moment, as the phone call ended and the quiet of the evening settled in, I knew that no matter what the future held, I had learned one of the most important lessons of all, that love, even when it feels broken, can still heal, and that sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free,